Welcome to another episode of the HaskinCast Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin. Here we are in episode 450 something. I think probably 454 or 5, somewhere in there. And I have the lovely Diane Dresback returning to the show for her third time. Diane, how are you?
I'm doing great, Scott. Just doing great. And thank you for having me again. It's always fun to talk with you.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure. Your life is so exciting. You've always got so many fun things going on, and you were kind enough to provide me with an advanced copy of your new book coming out. I I still don't even think that I've come down from all the emotions. And I finished it, what, like 4 or 5 days ago, probably. And I'm still just like a mess because of all the things that happened in the book. And this is a story about your adopted brother, and you were, of course, adopted as well. It's a whirlwind. How how were you writing it?
Uh, actually, there were several times because there's two characters in the book. The book is written from two different perspectives, my brother and then our adopted mother.
Mhm.
And writing her chapters was really, really an emotional roller coaster for me, just
Mhm.
because I had to put myself in her shoes and, try to think of how she would have experienced this because she's passed now. So I
Mhm.
couldn't go to her and ask.
Mhm.
Um, and so that definitely was the more difficult part.
Yeah, I can imagine. And the format of the book is really interesting because it really spans a whole lifetime, but you've picked out certain moments to tell the story. I mean, obviously you can't talk about everything over 60, 70 years, but you picked certain moments. Was it hard to pick which ones, like once you had your list, to say, I really want to talk about this and that's going to have to get cut?
I think, I mean, yes, you are correct there. My brother has had so many crazy experiences. I mean, just so much. And I tried to pick things that would bring out his character, kind of the struggles that he was having and how he became who he is as an adult, as he
Mhm.
was growing. And so I tried to focus on his his character and his experience with the whole adoption thing. I'm
Mhm.
sure, he has a lot of friends that are interested in reading his story. And I keep saying, I couldn't put everything in there
Yeah.
because oh my gosh, he's just really led a life. I will just put it that way. And then things that I remember too, of course, being his younger sister by 6 years.
Mhm.
There were things that I remembered. So that was kind of fun to be able to share some of that as well.
Sure. And it's interesting where you pop in and out of the story because you're there, but then you don't really go into what's happening with you a lot until more towards the end. And so I found it kind of fascinating where you pop in a little bit, and we get to see like little glimmers of the relationship that you guys had. But what I'm wondering is how close really were you? Because you don't really get into that much.
It is interesting. I feel that my brother and I are closer now
Mhm.
than we probably ever have been. And the reason why is I think because he was adopted first, and then I came along a year later. The 6 year difference we did, and I go into a little bit of, we spent 6 years living in England when we were
Mhm.
kids, and we were at different schools, different boarding schools. And
Right.
then when we came back, he was 18 and moved out. So the experiences really that we had together as siblings was a little bit more limited. It was more vacations and that type of a thing. And so that's why we've become more close as we've gotten older, even though we've always lived in different states most of the
Mhm.
time.
Right.
Um,
Well, even growing up, I mean, a 6 year difference is a pretty wide gap for siblings, especially siblings of the opposite sex. If you
mhm,
had an older sister, you might have had more time together or made time together because you had more things in common.
mhm.
But what really angered me almost right off the bat, and I don't want to give too much of the book away, but I mean, the beginning of it starts with him basically finding out, wow, I'm in an orphanage. I don't understand what's going on. And that had to be just so frightening. I mean, he's a couple of years old. He's nothing yet. and to just be put in a world with no connection, no assistance, nobody to talk to, or nobody to even sit him down and explain what's going on. Um, and I realize the time frame of it, but I don't understand the humanity of people that would get into an industry like that and be so cold-hearted and cruel. And that nurse, I'm not a violent person, Diane, but I kind of wanted to punch her in the face a couple of times.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. His mother, his biological mother sent him to the orphanage at age 3. And you just think about a 3-year-old. Like
Yeah,
I've had a grandchild and I just think I can't imagine what it would feel like to do that. And and of course, and this the story is inspired by true events.
right.
So my brother doesn't necessarily remember what happened at 3 years old. So I had to put myself in his shoes to think, what would it be like to be
Yeah,
3 years old and your whole family is just not there anymore, including two other siblings. So,
right.
oof, I don't get it either.
And it's such a normal thing. I mean, it happens so often that kids are just abandoned and they're just not given it's not even a matter of not being given opportunities or they're given the basics. They're given shelter and really like a bed and some clothes or whatever, but they're not given the emotional and mental nurturing that they really need. And then we wonder why, in a way, society's so messed up. And the effect that those experiences when you're so young, those will formulate some of the deepest parts of your personality.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I came to understand that about my brother is that, those first 5 or 6 years are just, they're so influential
Mhm.
in who you become. And, and some of those things, as you grow and you become an adult, you're able to kind of overcome certain things. But, um, there's a part of it that just stays with you, I think, as your core.
Mhm.
And of course, that I wrote my adoption story in a
Right.
previous book.
Mhm.
And I came, very young as a baby. And
Mhm.
so I didn't have that type of a situation. I would say the two stories are just so different of how we came to come to the same parents.
Mhm.
And we're
Yeah.
very grateful that we did.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the I'm grateful for the way it all worked out, but it just there were so many parts of his journey that just made me so sad and frustrated. And I understood why he was the way he was and why he did the things he did, because you could see how it formulated that need to be accepted. That, I can say for myself, I had an experience where I was very young that led me to having issues of being afraid of being left behind. And I still to this day have those nightmares, but I understand where they come from. And I could see how his development, through what you showed, I could see why he was always like, I need to do whatever it takes to have people accept me. And that I would imagine was probably the most impressionable thing that could happen to him from being abandoned by his family.
Yes, yes. And so your earlier question about how did you pick things to share in the book, those are the things that I picked. I
Mhm.
tried to bring that out and to make so it must have worked.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely did. Yeah. What was his impression of it? Did he say, I wish you hadn't have gone into this? I wish you would have talked about this more? Or was he like did he just take it as it was?
Yeah, I actually on his last birthday, I went through the whole outline with him and shared bits and pieces from the book. Um, and he actually filled in a little bit more information in certain situations, which was helpful.
Mhm.
And but he's like, sis, I trust you, and this is good. He teared up at certain times, and when I showed him the book cover, well, at that point it was just kind of a draft of what it was, and he goes,
Mhm.
he got all teary eyed, and he's a very emotional, I mean, he feels so
Yeah.
much, and he's a wonderful man.
Yeah. I would say,
Very different from me,
mhm,
just in our lifestyles and the choices and all this kind
sure.
of stuff. But
But
so
I
much.
think there's something that his experience and yours too that would bring you to appreciate things in a way that might be different from the average person growing up who doesn't have those challenges of the lack of human connection, the lack of a support system, and then being wary of when you get one or when you think you're going to get one, that it's going to take a while before I trust this or I believe that this is going to be a permanent thing. Because even a couple times he was like, "Are you going to send me away because I was bad?" Um, I would have to think that going through those experiences would lead you to be more of that kind of person where those bonds really do mean something.
Yes, yes, I think so. I mean, I think even for my situation, which was, again, I said came as a baby,
Mhm.
but still growing up and knowing I was adopted, I never felt unloved, but it is kind of a weird sensation to know that you're not, you're not connected. You did come from somewhere else, and it's so hard to describe. But if you probably talk to anybody that was adopted, whether it was a good situation or a bad situation or whatever, there just is it's a little different feel, I think, than if, you just come in or you're not adopted.
Sure, yeah. And I mean, I would understand that there's a little bit of probably caution going into new relationships, just not, maybe, oh, okay, that this is the greatest thing in the world with every person you meet, because there might be that sort of how long is this going to last? How long are they going to want me around kind of thing? Does any of that seem like that would be happening to you guys?
Um,
Maybe when you were younger more so than now?
I didn't have that, and I think, and I don't really think my brother had that either. Maybe just maybe when he's younger,
Mhm.
but after he put my parents through so much as he's growing up, you know, I think he knew at that point that they weren't gonna kick him out or something. They were very
Right.
patient with him. I will say that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, he definitely pushed the level of, of tolerance more than a few times.
Oh yes, and of course I couldn't share everything, so yeah, definitely did.
Yeah, that was the other thing I was thinking. I'm like, okay, well, this is what you're telling us, but what are you not telling us? Like, how many other things did he do that, really led to
Yeah.
concern? And I mean, just the fact that he survived a couple of those incidents. I won't go into them because I don't want to spoil too much of the book, but pretty amazing. And I don't doubt he's feeling the aches and pains of those moments these days.
Yes, that is true. That is true. He's bounced back quite he bounces back pretty well,
Mhm.
but at his age, there's some stuff that he's having to deal with.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would imagine it was really difficult to write, especially revisiting a lot of those moments that you were in with your mom and those moments of concerns with your brother. But was it at all therapeutic for you to write this?
Um, I possibly I didn't really I wasn't going to write his story. I mean, I never really thought about it. I'll go back a little bit here. So I had written my story, and I say my story. It was that book, Room for Another, is mostly about my biological mother,
Mhm.
and some of her childhood and how she overcame so much, and how resilient she was, and then she found herself pregnant.
Mhm.
And then I do have a few chapters in there, but not as much. It's mostly focused on her.
Yeah.
So I had written that one and people reacted to it. They really loved it. I mean, we've, had some really good, feedback, and people just loved the story. And I was I was visiting my son and his wife in Minneapolis, and I was, kind of like, oh, I wish I could write faster because I'm working on this other novel.
Mhm.
People can write things in 30 days or once a quarter, and I'm like, it takes me at least a year because I have other things going on, and it
Right.
just takes a while for me to kind of put everything down. So my son said to me, Trenton says, so why don't you, when are you going to write Uncle Kenny's book. And I'm like, oh, well, I didn't really think about that. And so anyway, so I thought about it and asked my brother, and he's like, sure, that'd be great. So I switched and I started to focus on his story and telling his story. And then I decided to do it from the two perspectives. But I mean, I think maybe there was some therapy to it, at least the emotion that like I said earlier, how my mother was feeling,
Mhm.
how she might be feeling going through some of the things that she went through. Um, I was happy to tell his story though,
Yeah.
even
You
though it
did
was
it. You did it very well. And I will say, this is one that when you read the book, just have a box of tissues nearby because there's going to be some moments that are pretty intense. And like I said, I mean, I'm still kind of reeling emotionally from reading the book and just all the experiences. And uh, I have to say kudos to you for sticking with it because that for me to write a book like that, I don't know that I would have ever put it out. I'm glad you did because I think it's a great thing for people to read and understand. But I think I would have just been too maybe self-conscious to put it out myself.
Mhm. Well, as an artist and as a storyteller, every time I put anything out, whether it's a film or a book or anything, there's always that. I hope people accept. My
Sure.
husband, who
Yeah.
handles my book marketing,
Mhm.
so he says, "Oh, well, this many people are reading your book right now, on Kindle Unlimited or wherever it might be." And I'm like, it's just such a surreal feeling knowing that they're reading about my personal story or my brother's
Right.
personal story, or even a made up fiction story.
Mhm.
Um, that it's a really crazy feeling. It's
Yeah.
good. And you're just like, oh, please, please like it, oh, please,
Yeah.
I hope it entertains you, or
Mhm.
it evokes some kind of emotion, or because that's storytelling. We want to tell a story that has the reader or the audience, the the reader or the person watching a film. You want them to have emotion. You don't want them just
Sure.
sit there be
Yeah.
bored.
Yeah. Well,
So
I mean, even if you're doing a documentary, you want to elicit some kind of response, some kind of, anger or excitement or, revelation or whatever the thing is. But we put out art out there hoping that someone will connect with it in some kind of way. I guess for me, because I mean, being an author is one thing, being a musician is another. When I write music, no one knows what I'm writing about. I could be telling the most personal story, or I could be doing satire and no one would know musically. So there it's a different connection. But yeah, when you're writing something and you're writing out a story and dialogue, or uh, even if you're not telling a personal story, I feel like there's a little more at risk there for the creator because you're exposing more because it's a more direct, understandable reference.
yes, that is true. And you're just hoping. Probably okay. So I'm going to flip to another book that I wrote now, which is completely. I mean, it's science. It's science fiction, not heavy
Mhm.
science fiction, but there's a thread of, science fiction in it.
Mhm.
But the story is about a woman and her journey through this whole story. And so there's that emotion there too. But the science fiction part of it um, brings out some haters. I don't know if I want to call them haters, but people that don't like it. They just
Mhm.
don't like that particular thing. And
Mhm.
they can be very verbal on it with ratings and with comments and and I can say yes, I know that
Mhm.
about this particular story. I know that
Right.
people are going to react that way, and I have to kind of prepare myself for that. It's like, okay, some people are not going to like this, and I just have to accept that. And I'm somebody that I want everybody to enjoy what it is, and I just
Sure.
have to face the reality that there are going to be people that will be very verbal and very, especially online now where they can write anything, and that they're not going to like it. And like, okay, as a creative person, I just have to accept that.
I just got a notification a couple of days ago that it's been a year since I left Twitter. And I'm just like the happiest person in the world since I don't see all the anger on that particular platform. But I had a wonderful talk with Gabrielle Stone a couple of years ago, and we were talking about feedback that she gets on her book, which or her books, which are very personal journeys. And I was talking about one of the feedback pieces that I got on my first Vegas book, and it was by somebody had left a piece of feedback on Amazon that was very negative, and they said it wasn't what they thought it was going to be. They're a Vegas junkie. They love everything Vegas, blah blah blah. And I'm like, you just didn't read the description. Why is that my fault?
Right,
you know,
right,
but they'll attack you for anything that they don't like because it's not what they want it to be. And she said to me, gave me some great advice. She goes, you know what? It's really good that that happened. And I'm just like, why? Because it shows that the feedback is real. If all you're getting is just, oh my God, you're so great. Oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever written or ever read or whatever. It kind of looks like you just solicited feedback from certain people. Like it's good to have a little bit of a balance, and it's good to, maybe have people go, wait, what are they complaining about? Let me check this out.
right, right. Yeah.
But it still sucks to read it. But I
Yeah, it
think but I think it's more the way you go about it. Like there's nothing wrong with not connecting with a piece of art. It's really the way that you express that feeling. Like you could say, you know what, I really liked the character. I didn't like the science fiction setting. Like we had talked about the new Batista movie that I went and saw not too long ago. Like I thought the concept was great, but I thought, if they would have not made it an action film, if they would have made it a drama or a horror, it would have been much better. And that's okay. But it's if you're attacking, if you're complaining, it's a book. It's done. It's not going to change because you didn't like it. Just, say, here's what I liked, here's what I didn't like, and be polite about it. Then it's not bad to read.
yeah, yeah. I agree. And it's the same thing with film for me.
Mhm.
I can I can see a film and not like it, or I can read a book and kind of like skip because I listen to my books. Almost all of my books, I listen to them on an audiobook.
Mm.
Um, I might speed it up or but I always have an appreciation for the person who wrote it or, shot the film or whatever, because I know how much work goes into it. And
Yeah.
if it's not for me, so some people will send me a script to read, or they'll, have me watch something, and I always try and find something positive because, um, first of all, that's what my mother taught me. You don't say
Mhm.
anything bad,
Right.
if you don't have anything good, So I
Mhm.
try and find something that's positive, uh, unless they're specifically asking me, hey, give me your feedback, because
Right.
then,
Sure.
okay,
Mhm.
that they've given me permission to do that. But otherwise, I know how hard it is. And whether it's a story for me or not for me, that's really not my thing.
Mhm.
It takes a lot of effort, and this because you've done all the stuff that I've done. It takes a lot of effort
Yeah.
to put together a movie or write a book.
Mhm.
I'm not a musician like you, but I would imagine it's the same way. You put
Oh
a
yeah.
piece of music out there, and you've put your heart and soul into it and all this time, and sometimes it's just not for that person. So I just don't think people have to be mean about it. That's all.
And that's where I come from, the same standpoint. I mean, there's nothing wrong with not connecting or not liking it. Like I get people asking me opinions on music that is just not my genre. And I'll start with that feedback. I'll say, well, this isn't typically music style I would listen to, but here's what I like, here's what I don't understand or don't like. But and then I usually sum it up with, but again, like I said, this isn't my genre, so take my feedback with a grain of salt.
Mhm.
Usually my feedback would be more on how it's mixed or something like that, more so than the writing side of it. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with expressing your opinion. I welcome that so much, but there's a way to do it and there's a way not to do it. And I think we're in such an angry society right now where people just want to lash out. I've heard people say the phrase, and this really gets me, I just need to rage right now. Do you? Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. It's funny. I had back in corporate America, we had some executive business coaches that would come in and, work with our executive team, and they always said that when somebody comes up and does like what you're saying, where they're just raging or they're just, they just have to vent. And some of that's okay if you understand and they're not coming to you to like they need answers. They need to talk it out, but they
Mhm.
say it that way.
Right.
Um, but she always likened it as, it's like you're throwing up on somebody. You just come in, you just like vomit all
Mhm.
of this negative stuff, and then they feel better and they go off, and then you're sit with, you've got the mess all over you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so now you're left with that. And
Mhm.
so they said, just be very, very careful on, you be cognizant of what you're doing you know, so
You know what we need
there's
is
my,
we need some kind of energy neutralizer, right? Where instead of going to somebody and ruining their day by venting your stuff out, they can just touch this thing and it can just kind of negate the negative energy and just put them in some kind of calm state. That's what we need. And I think that's why people drink or overeat or, turn to substances because they just need something to make it go away.
right, right. Yeah. Hey,
For me,
hey,
it's art.
new,
Like
new science fiction book there.
put on a piece of music, put on a movie, put on something that's going to make you happy.
Right.
If I need to get uplifted, I'll listen to, something by the Beatles or, whatever it might be that'll, I don't mean this something by the Beatles. I meant the song something by the Beatles.
Oh,
But you have your things that you can go to. We have plenty of outlets
mm,
available to us.
yeah, yeah.
It's very strange. But no, I'm very excited about the book. The link is in the show notes for you guys. I'm assuming that are you going to be able to do an audio version of this book? You are.
Yes,
Okay.
I am. Yes, I went back to Billy Bryant,
Mhm.
who did the audiobook for Room for Another. And I said, would you do this book as well? So she's reading the part of my mother, and then I'll have a male voice, obviously, for my brother. So
Mhm.
yes, that I think they're going to be recording that in November. So I'm
Oh,
hoping
nice.
maybe in December I'll have that available.
Oh, very
I'm
cool.
excited about that. Yeah.
Very cool. Yes.
Like I said, I'm an audio listener. So,
Yeah, I was too when I would drive and I used to have like back in my corporate America days, I used to have a 45-minute drive each way. So there was massive audiobook consumption going on back in those days. I think I got through the entire Stephen King The Dark Tower series in about a month and a half. And those were
yeah.
some long books.
Yeah.
Um, I I'm just so in awe of you for just having the guts to even take this project on. Did you have some doubts along the way of maybe I shouldn't put this out? Maybe I should not be working on this?
No, no, I
Good.
didn't. I didn't. I, I mean, I guess the only thing I could say is that the because the story was so different, and again, I'm not going to give it away either.
Yeah.
But there are some things in there that are just they're just hard,
Mhm.
hard to kind of deal with. I mean, um, I guess I just have to trust that the reader knows that it was just a bad situation.
Mhm.
And I thought, oh, the readers of Room for Another, they may not like, this particular story. But I mean, we
Mhm.
didn't get to pick the stories. I mean,
Yeah.
it really happened. So,
Yeah.
you don't get a chance to do that. So I just have to trust that, they will take this story in and just realize that
Mhm.
it's based on true life stuff. So,
Yeah.
some yeah.
I'm curious when I was writing the last, 12 or 13 chapters of the Universal Court, I knew I wanted a certain emotion. I wanted to feel a certain way while I was wrapping that story up. And so I created a specific playlist of music from the show Lost that I thought, boy, it was like 32 minutes of music or whatever, and I just put it on
Mhm.
repeat. Did you have any scenes or any, specific music that you listened to while you were writing?
Yes, I always do. I always have my headphones on with listening. Um, it's just more about the emotion. Like sometimes
Yeah.
on Pandora, I'll pick the musical piano music or
Hmm.
just kind of the reflective type of music.
Mhm.
And I just let that play in the background. And that really helps me. So it depends on the tone of
Mhm.
what it is, but with no lyrics. I
Yeah.
can listen to stuff with lyrics while I'm writing.
Mhm.
So, if I'm writing something exciting or happy, then I'll change up the style of music.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that can really seep in, and next thing you know, you're actually typing out the lyrics and instead of the dialogue. I worked for an inventory company years ago, and I remember it was 5 in the morning or so, and we were counting on Michael's Arts and Crafts, and they wanted us to count all the plastic flowers that were in this bin in the front first. So we're all ganging up. We all take different sections, and they were playing an 80s station, and Jenny came on. So we're like 1, 2, 3, 8, 6, 7, 5. Damn it, we ended up, we just could not, literally we could not count a thing, and we just waited and we all stood there looking at each other until the song was over, and then we got back to work. So yeah,
That's hilarious. That's
that's
hilarious.
that stuff
Well,
can really seep in. Yeah.
yeah. I can't uh and I can't always listen to music that I have had listened to like when I was younger. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So because then I have memories and emotions, it's like, oh, I remember this song from in high school or, that type of thing. It has to be stuff that's kind of more I mean, I've heard it multiple times because I listen to it over and over,
Mhm.
but I don't have any connection really to it to draw me out to start
Right.
thinking about, oh, this is, they played this at the prom or, whatever.
Mhm. Well, one thing that I've always admired so much about you, and I'm so bad at, I haven't put out a newsletter in like a year, but you have your monthly newsletter, and every month I get it, and I'm like, how are you doing so many things? And then I'm like, how has another month gone by? And what have I accomplished in the last month? How do you balance your time? It seems like you're getting so much done. You do so many things, but I mean, do you have a specific system that you use, or do you time block?
I'm pretty disciplined as far as working on a particular thing. So this morning I'm going to work on this, and then this afternoon I'm going to work on this. But then sometimes the little things kind of seep in too, which throws you all off schedule.
Mhm.
Um, I feel the same way. Like I have another newsletter due in a few days. I'm like, how can this happen so quickly?
Yeah.
So I have a passion for filmmaking and books, which would probably mean if I didn't have the passion for filmmaking and writing and in that area, I probably could put out more books,
Mhm.
but I can't. I love both,
Right.
so
Right.
I just have to do that. And then my husband and I, we have a life also, and there's we have a granddaughter and four adult children, and so I mean, it's just. But I know what I want to do, and I don't know why, but I can stay focused on certain things. Like, so I'll go into Starbucks once a week. I
Mhm.
write from home too, but I'll go into Starbucks once a week and sit there for literally 5 or 6 hours. Just get up to go use the restroom maybe once.
Mhm.
And I just sit there with my headphones on and just totally focus on something. So I'm grateful for that. The other thing is that I like to finish things because I like to cross them off oh, I want to do that. And
Mhm.
I check it off. And so I like to finish. And I think finishing things is very important. And sometimes I think that that's a struggle for some people. They get 80% done and then, they get enamored with
Yeah.
something else. So I was just telling my husband on the way back from the Sholo Film Festival that I said, okay, I've got this book is coming out on November 14th, and I've got still has stuff I need to do on this. But boy, after that happens, most of my time is going to go back to some film, to film projects.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
I
but I like that you can just jump right back into it. So you say like, okay, this morning I'm going to work on this book, this afternoon I'm going to work on this script, and you can just kind of jump back and forth. And that's one of the great things about having multiple projects is that if one is, you're just not feeling it, or you're not sure where you want to go with it and you don't want to put anything down just yet, you can jump on another project because you have more than one going on. I think
yes.
about an author like Dan Brown or John Grisham who spend, months on a book, and, all the research and everything that they have to do. And I'm like, what do you work on when you get stuck, or when you're like, I'm not sure what to do next? What
Yeah,
you have one book you're working on.
yeah, yeah. Well, and I think, well, I don't know. I mean, again, I like two different things, and they're
Mhm.
both kind of similar in the storytelling side of things. So
Sure.
that stays engaged the whole time. It's just
Mhm.
that, writing a book is much more solitary and filmmaking is much more collaborative. And
Right.
I love people. And if I was just writing books, and now maybe years from now I'll just do books, but for right now, I mean, after I haven't had contact and collaboration with people, it just like drives me nuts. I'm an
Mhm.
old, human resources person, and so
Ah.
I
Mhm.
like to do collaborative projects where everybody gets to do what they love, and we put out something greater than what one person could do. So I like both of those things. So I have
Mhm.
to keep my hands in the both pots.
And you just did a 48-hour film challenge recently for the A3F, which is a great organization. I've done some for them in the past as well. Do you find them that they're still exciting, or do you feel they're kind of like, okay, here's the formula of how we do this and how we make it work? I like the last couple I did, I kind of felt like that, like it was formula almost to me because I'd done so many of them.
hmm This particular one is a 72. I think they've moved mostly to doing 72
Oh,
hours, which is
okay.
nice because at least you can get a few hours sleep.
Right. Yeah.
The other ones is like 4 hours sleep from Friday morning until, Monday night is not enough.
Mhm.
So, um, no, I love them. I love them. And I have people like, oh, I don't know how you keep doing them. And I'm like, because they're fun. I
Yeah.
love it. Yes, I have a little bit of a routine with it as far as like, okay, you get the guidelines, you do the script, those type of things, like the
Mhm.
steps.
Right.
Uh, but they're all different.
Mhm.
And even though sometimes I work with the same people, uh, I don't always work with the same people. And so it's always a new experience working with somebody different.
Mhm.
And this time we ended up just doing straight up comedy, which which is kind of interesting because I'm not really a comedy person.
Mhm.
And but it just, as I was working with the script, I had this idea for it. And it just ended up, I'm like, this could be really funny. So we'll see. The screening is this Thursday, so we'll see, how the audience reacts to it. But I had, some really fun actors and we had a great time. We had a
Yeah.
great time.
That's the most important thing. And I think for me, because I was always isolated at home working on the music, I mean, I did a couple where I was like a PA
Yeah.
or sound designer. But for the most part, I was isolated from everybody. I'm at home just, hoping that if there's a change, somebody will let me know so I could write something really quick. So I think for me, it was a little bit of a different experience because I didn't have that, group interaction. But the times that I was on set, I always found it fun, but we always drew comedy, always. And I used to tell Tammy, because most of the ones I did were with the Phoenix Independent Filmmakers Group. And I always used to tell her, I said, the day I leave this group is the day you'll get a horror film because that's what I want. And we never got one horror film the whole time in a 48-hour film challenge that I was in that group.
Wow. Wow. I did one horror and I can't remember if it was for IFP or A3F, but we did one horror one. Mostly now, A3F says, whatever genre, but you just have to
Oh.
use these guidelines. It has
Oh,
to,
okay.
have this theme in it, the prop and the action and then the line of
Mhm.
dialogue. And so, I really, I love it. And A3F is having their 20th anniversary next
Wow.
February for their challenge. And they're actually doing a document. Well, they're not doing it, but another group is doing a documentary about A3F and
Hmm.
independent filmmaking here in Arizona. So we're all getting interviewed and stuff. So
Nice. I love
it's
that it's still
cool.
going so strong. It hasn't kind of fizzled out with people moving away to states that are a little more lucrative and
Well, they have. Like when I go to the A3F now, I don't know a lot of people that are, a lot of the teams and stuff. But that's good. I mean, people have moved away. And but you've got younger teams coming in and so it's a constant flow. Jay was saying at this kickoff this last time that he went back and he kind of counted and that challenge is responsible for something like 1,700 films being made
wow.
in, just because of their challenges. And I'm like, well, you should be proud of that. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
Well, and it forces people to be creative in a time crunch, which is a very important skill, especially if you're interested in becoming a writer in, a more professional environment. You have to be able to create on the fly. People like editors and everybody in their positions, like I had to learn to write music very, very quickly. And I'm grateful for the challenges for that, really helped a lot because when I get a corporate gig or something like that where I have to write music, like, well, can you give us a sketch in a couple of hours? Oh, sure, I can. It might not be exactly like the final, but I can sketch you out a couple of ideas because I learned that skill. Um, I think it's just fascinating that I love that they're still going. And I remember, I think it was A3F where there was a team that was so determined to turn their film in, and their laptop was dying that they hooked up their laptop to a car battery and turned it in that way. And I'm like, that's the kind of stuff that shows what you're made of. That you didn't just give up and fold and say, well, I guess we're out of the contest, or like you did everything you could. You were so determined and so proud of what you did that you went that far. I love that kind of stuff. And you don't see opportunities for that as much outside of an intense contest like that.
Right, right. Yeah, I have a vivid memory of a couple times, in the car, like one person's driving because you have to turn it in by 7 o'clock.
Mhm.
So driving in the car and have the hard drive here and you're rendering and yeah, yeah.
Well, the
I
irony
think
is
all
that
of us have been there. Now it's all you turn it in electronically. So you're at
right.
home, come
Yeah.
on,
But
so
I mean, the irony of the whole thing is that the thing that takes the longest in the process and the thing that you have the least control over is the rendering. And you can't start that until the very last step. It's not like you can render little bits along the way because at the end you still have to render the final film in one file. So I always thought that was interesting that it's like you work so hard and the one thing you can't control that takes the longest is the last step.
yeah, yeah. And it's like, oh, I want to fix this, but I want to make sure that, I don't miss the deadline. It's like, so you're like trying to do, yeah, it's
Mhm.
my son, my son has a reputation of, it goes in like 10, the final thing goes through like 10 seconds before the deadline,
Yeah.
so this time I got it turned in 25. I was editing this time. So I got turned in 25 minutes early, but
Oh,
still it's,
that's still pretty close when you think about it.
yes.
Isn't that interesting though? You get used to doing these things in 48 hours. Now you have 72 hours. That's a whole nother day, but you're still down to the wire because now you're like, well, now since I have more time, we can do this, we can do that. But you always end up with that. I'm going to push it, everything I can add to it, everything I can do to make it as good as it can be right down to the end.
Yep, yep. That is very true. That is very true.
Did you ever do a 24 hour?
I did 124 hour. It was through A3F. That was kind of crazy. That was actually Ernest Robinson shot that one, and he's the one that shot this last one that we did too. And that's another thing is that I mean the beauty about these things is I've worked with a lot of different DPs over the years, and I love that because I get a chance to work with somebody and some new people, and it just expands your network, more, and you say, oh. I like working with this person, or, this person, it would be good for this future project, or,
Mhm.
whatever. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, the 24-hour, it was almost, I wouldn't say it was easier but you just knew you were going to be up. Just didn't sleep at all.
Right. Yeah.
And you knew it was going to be over earlier.
Mhm.
Um, you know, um, I like the 72s. I think those are fun. Or sometimes they do the 10 days,
Oh,
which those are really fun too. They don't do them all the time, but I do like that because you really do. But you're still having to turn it in and you're still fiddling with it.
right. Right. Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing. That's the perfectionist, right? You want to make the thing that whatever it is that you're going to show as your work, not just for you, but for your group too, because you appreciate all the people that come together to make that film happen. Yeah, it's just it's one of those things where you're like, I wish I would do eye color correction. Oh wait, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done. Do you ever like after you've turned it in, do you ever go back and then fix all the little bits and pieces that you didn't do and really make the film final?
Yep, yep, yeah. Um, Especially if it's something, so we did a 10-day about a year and a half ago, and especially if you're going to submit it to a film festival. So
Yeah.
Devin, my son Devin, edited that one.
Mhm.
And so we did go back in and, we're able to, if they have like a 7 minute deadline, or I'm sorry, a 7 minute limit, so then you might make it spread it just a bit because there was a shot that you really like that you want to put in there, and then fix, the credits so they're not like, and then that's it. They just like show up and nobody can read them.
Right.
Um, so, and little fixes too, because when you see it on the big screen in the theater, you're like, oh, I could make that a little bit better. Or you see audience reaction and you're
Mhm.
like, oh, so you learn from all that. So yes, we do that. And so that one I did a year and a half ago. So Devin did the director's cut, and that's what we submitted to the Sholo Film Festival, or that one, and then a documentary. But that one in particular, we submitted. So you can take these films and submit them to other venues and other screening areas. So that's nice to be able to do that.
Yeah, they have a bigger life. I mean, even just the showing. I mean, I don't know if you guys are still doing those at Harkins theaters, but you're seeing your work on a regular movie theater screen. The same place that you would go see Star Wars or something else, and that was never lost on me. That was always so cool to hear my music in the surround sound and all that. But I remember the last one I did was actually with Kimberly, who you've worked with a number of times, and it was called Betsy Boone's Big Bad Day, and that premiered at Comic-Con in Phoenix, and it was so cool to be able to see that screened at Comic-Con. I was like, wow, this is a really neat, to see those films get a life besides the however many people see that little screening or might, people that throw it up on YouTube. They really can go on to showcase the talent of everybody who worked on it.
Right, absolutely. Well, the cold night, just got back from the Sholo Film Festival yesterday.
Mhm.
And so I had three projects in there. I had the cold night, which was a short, and then the Together with ALS, a wife's perspective,
Mhm.
which I did with Kimber, actually,
Oh,
which was a
mhm.
documentary about ALS. It was um, we actually were asked by a woman whose husband has ALS, and they wanted to tell their story, just kind of how it impacts the family members of the film. So Liana Hubbard and her husband David Darnell
Mhm.
uh, brought us in to put this together, and it turned out really well.
Oh,
So
good.
and then I had my feature script postponement, which there's all kinds of different stories about this. But anyway, The Cold Night ended up, winning first place.
Oh,
And
nice. Congratulations.
it was tied with another film, but out of all the films, and so it's like, wow. And so this was something that we did, in this 10-day period. And it's based in the world of Postponement, which was the screenplay and the novel that I wrote. So a lot of my stuff is just like intertwined, the book and the film and the screenwriting and all that stuff. That's exciting. That gets me up in the morning, and
Sure.
I'm able to do these things. So we were happy with that. And the screenplay got second place out of all
Wow.
the screenplays. So that was good. And we won some awards for the ALS video that we did. So
Wow.
we're all pumped up now. We're
Yeah,
back home. Oh, oh.
congratulations. You're gonna have to get like a tough shed or something just to put shelves in for all these awards you're getting. I love the recognition though. I mean, it's to me, I've always just been happy with, did I finish it? That's the accomplishment. That's what matters the most. But when you've created something that connects with people, that they've, not a matter of being better than the other films per se or the other screenplays, but just that you've connected with somebody in a way that they felt this was worthy of notice.
Right, right. Well, it's funny
Yeah.
because that particular film, it's got a little controversy to it anyway, on purpose.
Mhm.
And so I submitted to some festivals, and some of them really liked it, and the other ones I was rejected. And so it just depends on who the judges are and who the audience is that's actually, making that decision. So
Right. Well, it's the beauty and the darkness of art, right? Because everybody's got their what they're going to connect with, and it's all based on so many things. what mood they were in when they read it, how tired they were, how many other things, like maybe if they read yours first or second, they would have felt differently about it. Maybe if they'd had a better lunch than they did that day. I mean, there's so many things that don't really constitute whether your work is good or not. And that's such a subjective word anyway. But it's like, what can you really draw from somebody not liking something when there's so many factors that go into that?
Right. Yep.
It's tough.
Totally.
So as we wrap up, I mean, I could talk to you all day long, but as we wrap up, tell us what we can look forward to next.
Oh, okay. So,
Well, whatever you can tell us about, because I'm sure you've got so many things going on.
as far as the book world, that will be coming out in a few weeks.
Actually, well, this will come out on October or November 10th, so just a few days before the release of your book. And like I said, guys, as always, the link is in the show notes. And let me just say, please leave a review, at least leave a star rating, something that really does make a difference, and it helps the book get seen by a lot more people. So just at least if you don't want to leave a review, at least take a moment and give it a rating.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes. Especially as an independent author, those ratings really, really help people, especially because, they introduce you and confirm that as an independent author and not like this huge person, that the book's worth reading. So,
yeah.
So after that, then I have my husband and I, Rick, who is an amazing support. He does my bookmarking, like I said, and he's also going to be producing and executive producing the films that we're going to be doing. So we're going to spend a good amount of time putting together our business plan. We've already started putting it together. Business plan, pitch decks, so we can go to investors for the feature films that we want to do, which are based on my novels, which were based on the ideas of the screenplays to begin with. So I kind of go full circle with those. So that's going to be taking up a good chunk of time. Next year, I probably will get back to writing the original novel that I was working on before. But the focus is going to be definitely on the film right now.
Well, it's a balance, like, okay, so I just did a book. Now I want to do a film. Now I want to do a book. And like I said, it's the beauty of having so many different projects. It's something that I appreciate when I've got multiple things going on as well. And I admire so much about your tenacity, how hard you work, and that you're putting out things that are real quality and not just like, you're not just cranking out crap. You're putting out stuff that's worth experiencing.
Well, thank you so much for that, Scott. I really, I really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And you know how difficult, and not difficult, but how time consuming these things are. So,
Oh, yeah.
And you're into everything too. You've got so much going on as well. So
I do, and I'm gonna get to this finishing the album. I've only got three more songs to write, for crying out loud. So yes, that will be happening. But Diane, thank you so much for coming back to the show. It's always so fun to talk to you. Thank you for sharing this story with us. Please give your brother a hug from me the next time you see him.
I will do that. Thank you so much for having me. It is always fun to come on your show and just have a conversation.
Anytime. You are always welcome here. Thanks, you guys, for listening to the show or watching on YouTube, as it were. Again, go check the show notes. The link for the book is in there. Go to Amazon, download it, and look for the audiobook version to follow not much longer from now. So we will see you guys again next week on the HaskinCast Podcast. Cheers.